Hello everyone, in my next video I'll be cutting the Italian bob. What is it? A very beautiful classic bob line, but with a modern twist. On the lower side, nice and full with volume, but on the other hand, a soft layering on top that you'll also apply with the knife. Are you curious about this haircut? Then watch my video. Here are a few examples of the Italian bob. Describe it being worn in a side parting. Before you start cutting, you first make a section because you want to be able to cut this line within half an hour in the salon. I start with the horseshoe, and then you begin at the temple of the head, then you go around on the crown, and on the other side of the temple, that's where you end. That hair you comb up and hold it in place with a clip. Once you've secured the top, then you move on to the back. Look, I'm now securing it here with my clip, then I turn my drill around, and then you can see it well. Then I move on to the second section, and at the back of the head, I create a middle part, as you can see here, and then I'm going to the occipital bone. Look, with your client, you can really feel that occipital bone there, unlike on a doll. But when I come forward here, just like now, in the middle part, then you can easily fasten it with a clip, and it's also the fastest way. Don't wind up the whole passe, because then it gets all messy. And on the other side, I do exactly the same. So you can bring it forward, divide the middle area well, and secure it with your clip. In this way, I've divided 3 levels. I have the top part, the horseshoe. I have it here. First, I focus on the middle section. Look, I just need to pay close attention for a moment. I've secured the middle part with a middle parting and a line on the occipital bone. From here, one can cut sickly. Typically, the Italian bob is detached from the shoulders. So we've seen the lob, which was over the shoulders, and the Italian bob is detached from the shoulders. I cut it with the comb control technique, so with little tension and the wide tooth of my comb. Because I want it to be straight when it's dry, not when it's wet. I also cut at eye level, so I sit on a stool and the doll is quite high, allowing me to align my eyes directly with the line I'm cutting. The next line, so the middle lane, it goes right on top, so you don't let it grow longer. You don't cut it shorter. It sits on top of the first line you've already cut. Look, I'm turning my craziness, so constantly my body is where I'm cutting. I don't stay in one spot because I want it completely straight all around. With a real customer, he takes, so you tap just above the ear to create a bit of length increase. Otherwise, it might end up too short at the front. When you've cut a second plane, then you can move the third down and then on top of your line again. And when you cut with the edge control technique, so without tension in your fingers, don't check yourself with tension in your fingers either. Look, tap it again, just giving that little bit of extra length to the front. And you do this exactly the same on both sides. When your client has very thick hair, you can of course add an extra parting or an extra section. See, it's important to keep your guideline visible. So I could cut this in 20 passes, but that would take me way too much time. As long as you can see your guideline well, you can cut well. Once you've trimmed the bottom, we'll move on to the top, and for that, I'm creating a section. As you can see, 4 of these sections. I use a middle parting, the highest point of the head, behind the ear, and then in that way, I have 4 sections. That I can cut per section. I'll start with the first plane at the back. And I'm going to cut this hair. I let the hair drop to determine the length. And that works very well because the bottom length is already there. I am going to cut her hair and I'll do it just like that. Here with my razor or with my feather knife. And then you hold a small piece in your hand and then your knife is always diagonally upwards. So don't scrape the hair because then you might have customers saying, oh yes, but hair has sometimes been cut and it gets damaged. It's not like this in this way. So make sure you comb away from you. A Diogenes in the corner. You hold the knife in your hands and then in that way, with a light pressure on your thumb, you cut the hair off. so that I get a soft exterior. I take straight partitions, but I can adjust them to my fixed guideline. As soon as you start working with a fixed guideline, the layers outside of that are longer. And that's important for this line, because the bottom, I just want to create layers on top so the client can easily blow dry it into that Italian bob. I see my guideline here nicely. I can push it away from me. Pay attention to the movement I make. It has to be a smooth motion, so always a new blade, hair well moistened. That's how you're going to work. Then I go to the front and I stick to that fixed guideline. So I have a whole imaginary line running on top where I project all the hair towards. With the front side, you can also play around by perhaps letting the animal's hair grow out longer. This varies from client to client and depends on the shape of the face. For this doll, I just maintain a straight line. So look, do you see that? By projecting the hair along that fixed guideline, I create extra length, which allows me to retain more volume at the bottom of it. Then I move on to the next area, and that's exactly a copy of the other one. I take my guideline from the other section that I've done, and I nicely connect it. So you have to imagine I have a line running lengthwise on top of the head, and I project all the hair there, and with a technique-wise, with the knife, with the greasy knife, I remove the crust so that I already have a very nice soft exterior. Look, the bottom part won't be included anymore. And from there, we start working in layers. Because that's still important. We'll create some airiness on top. I reposition my hoof pick and secure the bottom because I don't want any airiness there. It needs to stay nicely full. I make a straight parting, I stand behind, and then I project the pass towards me. Look, I can go through it well. For the thrill, or for my fingers, I'm going to texturize the hair. I keep the length but remove some hair in between. And what's very important is that the tension of your knife is even. So don't press too hard on the left or right, because then you'll lose your pass. It must be a very soft, even flowing movement. If your pass is too wide, then you split it into two. I do that here too. Project it towards you, cut in front of your fingers, right where the tension is. Then you remove the hair in between. The length remains the same, but by trimming it shorter in places, you actually provide support for the longer hair above. Because you want for yourself, and certainly for the client, that they can create this beautifully with volume. Can style, and then it's really a treat to apply to the hair. Okay. What I mentioned at the beginning of my video is that it's very typical for this hair to be worn in a side part and somewhat away from the face. So for the front section, I don't want to cut it backwards because that would mean I'd have all short hairs. So then I turn it around just like here. TV Gelderland 2021. So then I project the pass towards me, and then I cut at the bottom. When you wear it on the back, the short hairs support the long ones. And then you have here really beautiful, the full bottom, which we simply clipped on bone. On top, we have the airiness of the layers with the knife. And then you really have that Italian bob caught beautifully. So blow drying is also very important here. I use products from Kis Haircare, and for that I use the Sweet Flag and then mix it with the Smoothie. Courageous. Sweet Flag gives great strength to the hair, and the Smoothie makes it very smooth because you want a smooth final result. Mix products well with each other and apply to the hair. Now you already see some color in the hair. I've also made a video of this color technique that's coming later. I use the Sillk'n hair dryer, and then I set it to a temperature of 75 degrees and a high blowing mode. With that, I can polish very beautifully. I start at the front with a thick brush, really old-fashioned blow drying, really beautifully polishing the hair, adding volume, and then strand by strand you work this line completely out. Even though the hair is worn in a side part, I still advise to blow dry the top 2 passes on the head backwards, because I do want a side part with volume. When I have then blow dried it backwards, I can lay it nicely to the side. And here I have the final result of the Italian book in the color film. I'll post it later on my YouTube channel.